had the fortune to meet the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, on the recently concluded Global FinTech Festival in Mumbai. Uh, it's a pity that this is the best picture that I could get with arguably the most photographed person in the world. Maybe for some other day, right? But as I started, preparing for this, I really felt that this is like a great occasion for me on two counts. One, the fact that we could talk about the story that we have built in India to the highest office in the country, and also more importantly, I could probably, tell my wife who wished, a couple of years ago, that we would ever, if we would ever make it big to be called in by the highest office in the country. I would like her to believe that it's her affirmations more than my hard work that got us there. A couple of weeks before the actual event that happened, we got called in by the organizers who said that, you've got to present to the Prime Minister. I was jumping around like a kid, a rush of emotions. What do I tell him? Oh, my Hindi is so broken. How am I going to manage this? And then, as these emotions started going through, I felt that, how much I've traveled as a founder, as a person, as a human being. And then I realized that it's important for me to tell my family and a handful of people who were really, who mattered, because the opportunity to, present to the Prime Minister really is about talking about things and, just really reflecting on the decade-plus journey. And, we said, we should do this, in a more meaningful sort of manner. Little did I realize that, I could actually draw inspiration from Steve Jobs in his famous Stanford address where he said, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. It just resonated with me. And then I felt, probably, it's a great way to start thinking about what I should be talking to the Prime Minister. And I also, around the same time, read a blog by a fellow founder called Neha Sampath, who really put a framework around how a founder should fire and rehire themselves, because the things are changing so rapidly. And as I connected the dots of my own experience, I realized that I've indeed fired and rehired myself, at least on 3 occasions. And I thought it'll be useful for people to know, what's the framework that I've used and kind of, got here. The first time when we started, we were a scrappy, company. And the CEO qualities that are required for a founder really varies very, very dramatically when you are a 0 to 1 company to 1 to 10 and 10 to 100 and so on and so forth. You normally hear this term, the queen is dead, long live the queen. If I have to paraphrase this to the startup world, it's almost like saying the CEO is fired, but long live the vision, which actually never happens, right? In reality, founders are anti-fragile to the whole concept of a Peter's principle, right? Which says that everyone rises to their level of incompetence, and they have to give up or just stay at that same level, right? So in many ways, founders really don't, think and go back to drawing board to say, am I fit to run the company? Because the skills with which we started the company and what actually made sense when you're a very young company probably begins to hold us back, right? And our own journey as a founder was marked by these classic first-timer missteps, right? We were ambitious. We were driven by the intense need to do something. And fortunately for us, back in 2014-15 when we started, a bunch of industry connections that we had really made it valuable in terms of what work that we were doing. But the investor ecosystem was not, as kind. They never really understood a financial or a fintech infrastructure business. So we never really got money. We were bootstrapped for 5 years. And then, our customers started paying our bills. We started creating value for people who are leveraging our platform. Over the next few years, we were unstoppable. By 2019, we were like about $3 million in revenue. We felt like kings. We have arrived. There are like hundreds of companies that are dependent on us. So if we go down, we're probably going to take like 100 other companies, so we'll never go down. Buoyed by this whole, feeling of the king, we said, the world is our oyster. Let's just go, to other markets. We landed in Dubai. We felt that, this is the next market to capture. However, we faced the, harsh reality where the bankers over there saw us as undercapitalized, outsiders. That realization hit us really hard. It actually shook me deeply, right? on the flight back home, I fired myself for the first time. I had to get out of the mentality that I am this unassuming founder who didn't care for the world, and I really had to not worry about promoting my company. As I returned home, I knew I had to evolve. Over the next few months, I spent a lot of time, sharpening my skills around how do I go out and raise money. We actually ended up doing 2 rounds back to back in a matter of 6 months. During this period, I also realized that that whole reinvention needed me to actually go seek. So I met nearly about 50 odd funds, refining my pitch, talking about my story over and over again, actually to transform myself into a full-time fundraising CEO. That experience allowed me to, basically go and relook at our business case. We pretty much did in 24 months. A startup that was a sub $10 million company grew to almost about $600 million in value. Now what? We had the valuation, we had customers, but we really had to reinvent ourselves for the second time. As a CEO of a venture-backed company, my role shifted from managing people, because that's what you do when you are bootstrapped, because you have nothing more to offer, no equity, no ESOPs, no free lunches. So you really had to care for the people more than any other situation. And we had to really innovate and grow on the back of the capital that we had raised. This transition actually became the defining moment for our company. If we hadn't adapted to that situation, our company could have become another startup casualty, because the bootstrap founder in me who got fired would have just let things status quo, right? And then as we started executing on the strategy, we realized that there's a bunch of things that we could do, either by ourselves or going out and acquiring businesses. So we went on a spree of acquiring half a dozen companies between 2021 and 22. And we faced more challenges than what we actually anticipated. Each acquisition brought with itself a set of challenges, right? You had cultural challenges, you had people challenges, you had founder egos that we had to manage, which we never anticipated. And what I would call it as productive chaos, right? And as we were doing this, midway through 2022, we actually went through this whole process of a regulatory change that restricted many of our core products. Our ARR, probably about $80 odd million, crashed to about $20 million in a matter of months. So any CEO who's losing 80% of his top line has to see the door. So was the CEO. For the second time, I got fired from my company, and I had to reinvent myself. The initiatives that we built over 6-7 years, the networks that we built, they all were rendered useless, and the crisis forced us to reevaluate everything that we were doing. My third rehire as a CEO marked a turning point. We entered a survival mode. We had to draw out and think of things that are working. What are the green shoots in the business? What is the potential growth that these green shoots could potentially become? And as we were doing that, and as things were beginning to sort of look great, the funding winter hit, right? So we had to really dig deep, go back to the drawing board, devising a new plan on cash flows, break even, how much can we sweat the cash. And I had to fire this CEO who actually brought in a strategy to keep us alive and really go into a wartime CEO mode, which necessarily meant that running the business with the assumption that we would never ever get funded. Fortunately for us, we did a Series D recently, about a couple of months ago, and we are stronger than ever before, right? Now, as a CEO of a Series D company, the hope is that I don't need to fire myself again, with the hope that we will probably go public in the next 3 or 4 years ago. Who knows, by the time we go public, we probably will have to find a new CEO who's actually geared to take on the challenges of a public company, right? So the overarching message that I found in doing this is that I got a 5-point framework around why founders should hire and rehire themselves. It starts with the fact that how do you really assess the need for the role, right? So as a founder, you have to ensure that what is important for the next 1 or 2 years. And then you really need to think about who you can approach. In our case, normally you'll get guidance that you can go seek expert help or a mentor help. You actually have to talk to your own teams. My senior guys, the N-1 leaders, they gave me valuable feedback in terms of how we should run the company better. And then the aspects around what the new role of the CEO should be, right? What is it that I was doing earlier? At the beginning of a company, you typically tend to micromanage. How do you step back and really let the company run, the teams to actually be managing by themselves? So these are the areas that I felt are really important from a from a hire and rehire framework. And as you think of your own world, it just not stop with just the CEOs and what businesses that we run. It also applies to us in our everyday life, right? We think of moments where a relationship that probably ended, a job that we probably lost. All of these are situations where we deeply have to think about what is it that pushed us into this zone, and maybe there's a chance for us to reinvent ourselves, right? And who knows, one of you might just be the next person who reinvented themselves and standing here and talking the next time. Thank you for listening.